You are on an H1-B visa, you cannot leave the country. You heard me. Just to straight up apply, it's $100,000 now, and you need to just pay that every year. Pursuant to blah blah blah, the immigration blah blah blah, entry into the U.S. of aliens as non-immigrants to perform services in specialty occupation is restricted except for those whose petitions are accompanied or supplemented by a payment of $100,000. There are thousands of H-1B visa holders who are not in the U.S. right now who now have to cough up $100,000 or just not have anywhere to go back to. Do you know how many fucking physicians we have that are on H-1B visas? It's a lot. In 2016, there were more than 10,000 physicians in the US with H-1B visas. In the 2025 match, nearly 10,000 international medical graduates secured first-time residency. These are your doctors, guys. You're not gonna have doctors. So let me get this straight. We're killing off all the healthcare workers, and anybody who's currently on one of these visas, if they leave the country to go visit family or something and they come back in, they need to cough up $100,000. And we also have no way of collecting this payment, for the record. We don't have it, and it just goes into effect tomorrow night. So, yeah, that's where we are. We have effectively sealed off one of the few things that give this country the soft power it has. Its ability to attract great minds and talent from abroad, being obliterated because a bunch of people are fucking racists. Stephen Miller is the president, by the way. This should kind of put the nail in the coffin on that. Jarvis, commence the American century of humiliation.
The Trump administration is trying to make it even more expensive for companies to hire international workers. President Trump signed an executive action on Friday, which would impose an $100,000 application fee for H-1B visas.
So the whole idea is no more will these big tech companies or other big companies train foreign workers. They have to pay the government $100,000, then they have to pay the employee. So it's just not economic. If you're going to train somebody, you're going to train one of the recent graduates from one of the great universities across our land. Train Americans, stop bringing in people to take our jobs.
Now, if it survives legal challenges, the fee would be a steep increase from current base filing fees of a few $100s. The administration says this is all part of their effort to curb what they see is overuse of the program.
So there's two things going on here. One, we had heard from a number of employers who said it was growing increasingly hard to actually get these H-1B visas. This likely will make it harder. But two, you see the administration here trying to do two things. One of them is get companies to essentially say that the person that they are hiring is so good and so unique, they could not be found in the United States, and they're willing to pay $100,000 for that person to come into the country. The other thing to keep in mind here is the companies that generally use these H-1B visas, they're likely to be able to pay that kind of fee. It's usually tech companies or computer companies who have said that they need this kind of foreign skill set that is not necessarily something they can find in a U.S. job pool.
I think I would feel more bad about the H-1B visa $100,000 fee thing if I didn't actually see what I see on a day-to-day. So I've worked with probably at least 20 or 30 H-1B people who have come over. And out of all those people, maybe one of them was really what they say when they say best and brightest. This dude could solve any problem. He was really outgoing and focused on making the team better. Of course, this dude works for Adobe, best of the best now, but these other companies that I've worked at, these people do not have a work ethic. Their work ethic is literally our livelihood and fact of being in the country is dependent on this work that we do. So you're sort of enslaving us. We sort of hate you. We're sort of going to fight you at every step and not ever give 100%, because if we did, y'all would just be taking from us unfairly. So we're just kind of going to make your lives miserable, try to get as many of our people in, because we can stand our own people, but we can't stand you guys and your culture. That's just kind of how it's going to be.
$1,000 just killed the American dream for Indians. He has raised H-1B fees from $1,000 to $100,000. To put this into perspective, the median salary of H-1B holders is $97,000. The H-1B fees is paid by the company. Think about it. Why would the company now pay $200,000 for an H-1B person when they can get the same job done for half the price?
Cheap labor is the reoccurring theme. It's not that Americans won't do the job that the undocumented immigrants will do. It's cheap labor. It's not that Americans aren't skilled enough or smart enough to do these H1-B visa. It's cheap labor. Now that Americans, or you have someone that's willing to put U.S. citizens first, now it's a problem when these immigrants practice the same principles in this country. Look at Hispanics. Hispanics get into a job, they're just going to hire other Hispanics. They're people. Los Angeles, they practice this in, and Chicago, I heard. So you don't even have to go to their country to see this. Now that Americans are getting an opportunity at some of these jobs, it's a problem. Americans, as far as not being skilled enough for these H1B visas, you have foreigners coming over here to get educated. The problem is that they don't want to pay Americans. Now the playing field is fair. And it's great because some of these American citizens could pay back their student loans, right? Joe Biden didn't come through for us. So now some of us U.S. citizens can have an opportunity at paying back some of these student loans because they high.
I don't like 47. I didn't vote for him. But I think the H1B visa thing is actually a good move. And in fact, I actually think the H1B visa should probably be eliminated altogether. And I'm going to explain why. And I think this is one of those things where we need to have a more nuanced conversation when it comes to immigration in this country, because there are things that Democrats don't want to touch because it's so averse to what a lot of people on the left feel. Because I think a lot of people on the left are not really considering the consequences of a lot of the policies that are implemented and also falling victim to the propaganda around it. So the thing with H1B visas is that it's supposed to fill a need where Americans don't have the skills to do the job, right? Americans are supposed to get first dibs on jobs in America. And if an American can't fill the role, then they're going to give it to an H1B, right? To an H1B visa. Here's the thing. A lot of the messaging we've received about Americans not being qualified for these jobs, it's a lie. If you do the research, you will find that we have more than enough people who are qualified to do these tech jobs, nursing jobs, all these different jobs that H1B visas are taking. There are plenty of Americans that can do these jobs. And the thing is, really, like, think further, think about the big picture. Americans are in an insane amount of debt from going to universities in this country. A lot of people come from their countries to get university educations here because they'll do better when they go back to their country. Okay, people come here to train for sports because they'll do better in sports when they join the teams in their countries. So if there's so many universities here that people from all over the world are coming to so that they can receive the education they need to do better in their country. And in fact, there's a problem with a lot of countries sending people here and having them spy and steal information and research from American universities, which they then use in their countries. Did you see how many countries when the government started defunding all of these different research projects, did you see how many countries jumped at hiring all these American researchers? Why do you think that is? We, as taxpayers, publicly fund all of this research that these universities have. And then it's given to these corporations and they sell it back to us. Like, for example, medication, right? So a lot of what's going on in the universities, a lot of the information, the knowledge, the innovation, it's not really being implemented in the US, but everyone else is benefiting from it. Okay, that's one. The other thing is that people are coming here to get that because they want it. They want all of the research and the information we have and the education we have here. And then somehow Americans are not qualified. Americans that are in a ton of debt are not qualified to do these jobs. So they're going to give it to people who don't have any university debt. No, the reality is that the government has been trying to get rid of the middle class. They don't want to give Americans the benefits and all of the, the high salaries and all these things they would need to give them to have a good quality of life. So it's easier to say we don't have qualified people. We need to hire people from another country. And then these people come here and they want to get citizenship. So they're not going to complain. They're not going to demand as much. I believe a lot of them are not even paid as well. Right. And then add to that the fact that you should really talk to people who have worked with people who have H1B visas. I've seen nurses talk about how they work in a hospital. And there are a lot of H1B visa nurses and they get in, they don't like Americans, so they bully them out of the job so that they can get more of their own in. So this is something that, I know it's uncomfortable to talk about, but this is part of the reason why Democrats are losing and why the left is losing, because you're not willing to have these conversations about the reality of how immigration has been weaponized. This is just one way that immigration has been weaponized against Americans. There are a lot of other ways. And the thing is, when I've had these conversations with immigrants, they often agree with me. But if I try to have the conversation with Americans, like first gen or like longer, that have been in this country, born in this country far longer, y'all don't want to hear it. Immigrants know what I'm talking about. But for some reason, a lot of like left-leaning Americans don't want to hear it, don't want to believe it. And I think it's because it challenges this idea that you're a good person and that you would never harm people. And I've even heard a lot of people on the left say, well, you know, we allow these policies because even though it has all these consequences, we don't want anyone that is deserving not to be able to get into the country. But that's not a good way to think. That's harmful. You can't harm American citizens to benefit someone else like that. No, not at all, ever. That shouldn't be a thing. And so anyway, that's my opinion on the whole H-1B visa thing. I know some people are not going to like to hear that, but it's the reality. And the fact is that if Democrats had been more willing to approach these topics with more nuance and in a more level-headed way and in a way that wasn't causing so much harm to Americans, maybe we wouldn't have what's going on right now. And there are a lot of different topics, a lot of different political issues that should be addressed with more nuance and should have higher standards in order for Democrats to win. And immigration is one of them in more ways than one, honestly, because the other thing is when they were talking about, you know, a lot of the people that are getting into the country are criminals. Listen, I've seen some of the news stories and some of the people they've picked up. And then when you look into it, you're like, how is this person still in the country? That dude that decapitated a man recently had like a rap sheet. A few of these guys that have been deported out of the country, when you look into their past, they had some kind of issues too. And it's like, why don't we have a higher standard? Why don't we have a higher standard? I mean, we can either talk about it or we can keep losing.
The reason why Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy want H-1B visa workers is because they can exploit them better.
Lower wages, right?
And Elon did this with Twitter. He went to Twitter and he fired 50% of the staff, right? Immediately, day one. He fired all those people. The only employees he retained, he kept, were H-1B visa workers. Why did he do that? Because those guys, if they get fired, they're gonna get deported. So now, you can force those guys to fucking stay there all day, every day, sleep at the office. They're basically indentured servants. That's what Elon Musk wants. That's what wealthy people want. They want to be able to get the most amount of time and productivity out of each individual employee. And the more vulnerable you are, the fear of deportation, the easier it is for your boss to turn around and be like, all right, I'm calling you up at 10 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. Oh, you got a fucking family emergency? You better get your ass in the office right now. I got a problem.
It should be fucking treason for companies like Microsoft to fire 14,000 American workers this year, 9,000 American workers in July, and then turn around and file for 4,000 H-1B visas to get 4,000 workers from India. It should be fucking treason. And the fact that the left and the right aren't calling this out and nobody is sounding the alarm that they just fired 9,000 employees in July and filed for 4,000 H-1B visas to bring over cheap labor from India, to bring over engineers from India is wild work. We need to be sounding the alarm on this. The fact that it's not being talked about on mainstream media is crazy. This does not feel America first. We need to be sounding the fucking alarm, because this is what we talk about when we say replacement theory. This is it.
You see some big tech companies where they'll lay off 9,000 workers and then they'll apply for a bunch of overseas visas. And I sort of wonder, that doesn't totally make sense to me.
The math doesn't.
That displacement and that math worries me a bit. And what the president has said, he said very clearly, we want the very best and the brightest to make America their home. We want them to build great companies and so forth. But I don't want companies to fire 9,000 American workers and then to go and say, we can't find workers here in America. That's a bullshit story.
What did Microsoft say when you brought that up with Microsoft?
Have you talked to them about it? I have not. I just became aware of this a couple of weeks ago. Somebody sent me an article about this, and they said, well, and it maybe was Microsoft.
It was Microsoft.
That fired, I think, 9,000 people. And then I was like, wait a second.
Record profits, record market cap.
But also saying they're desperate for workers. So I have not yet had that conversation with Microsoft. In my defense, I just found out. I will have a conversation.
This is your quick reminder that companies prefer employees on H-1B visas, not because immigrants work harder than citizens. It's because immigrants can't say no, otherwise they'll get fired and deported. It's all about exploitation and control.
And these are corporations whose main argument is, we just can't find Americans to do this work. and we just need to go all over the world to bring people in. If you listen to them, they will tell you two things. First, in terms of low-skilled jobs, they say they need foreign workers to do the jobs that Americans just won't do. And then, Madam President, this is what really gets me. They tell us that they need more H-1-B visas because Americans are just not smart enough to be computer professionals, engineers, university professors. Just can't find anybody to be a university professor. Accountants, I guess Americans don't add very well. We can't do that work. Financial analysis. Nurses, I guess we just don't have the capability of producing nurses. Psychologists, Americans, I guess, can't do that. Lawyers. My God, if there's anything the United States is capable of producing are lawyers, but I guess we need more lawyers to come into this country as well, and elementary school teachers. Madam President, I guess the young people who graduate college in America are not quite qualified to be school teachers. Now, Madam President, if Americans won't take low-skilled jobs that pay poverty-level wages, and presumably if they're not smart enough to do high-skilled jobs, I think the question we have to ask is what kind of jobs are going to be available for the American people. We can't do low-skilled jobs. We can't do high-skilled jobs. Hey, what's there for us? And I happen to think that the Congress should be spending a lot more time discussing this issue and making it easier for us to create decent-paying jobs for American workers instead of allowing corporate interests to drive wages down by importing more and more people into this country to do the work that Americans should be doing.
Not only is Bernie 100% right about the H-1B visa program, but in no way are his statements anti-immigrant. Tech bro capitalists love these visas because it allows them to recruit high-skilled labor that they can control. Specifically, they can stop them from unionizing. Because someone on this visa program can only remain in the United States if they stay employed by the company that sponsored them, that discourages them from organizing. Well, it's illegal to fire someone for organizing. If you do let someone go on this visa program, they get deported right away. They're not able to contest that claim in front of the National Labor Relations Board. This reduces labor protections for the American-born and the foreign-born workers, making all workers worse off. It's no different than when capitalists offshore to a different country, and while they argue they're creating jobs for that impoverished country, what they're actually doing is exploiting cheap labor costs and limited protections. So if you care about workers' rights, both American workers and global workers who flock to America, then you need to seriously consider reworking this program.
Okay, so regarding the Indian trucker situation, because I'm using that to bring forth my conversation about my experience, I'm only going to focus on Indians. So I work in the tech world. I was responsible a couple of years ago for leading a team of IT professionals. And I had an Indian recruiter whose job was to provide me with resumes to fill positions on my team of people she supposedly vetted and deemed qualified for the roles. And two things happened at once. I noticed that every person she sent over, 99% of the time, was Indian. And most times they were from this specific agency. Employment agency or staffing agency. Then I also noticed that every time I would interview these people, 8 times out of 10, they would look different than the LinkedIn profile. They wouldn't be able to answer basic questions that anyone who was qualified should be able to answer. And so I confronted her finally, and I said, firstly, I noticed that almost everyone you send over to me as a candidate is Indian. I also noticed that they come from the same agency usually. And then I also noticed that most of them are not qualified or don't even appear to be the person they presented themselves to be. And so she eventually was investigated and fired. However, my point is the trucking industry is not the only industry where we have Indians who have fraudulent and illegitimate credentials. So because my original video did get some good engagement, and I had to end it abruptly because I got a phone call, I'm going to come back and give some context. So firstly, my department was headed by an Indian man. And honestly, like 99.9% of the people in his department were Indian. I was very shocked that he hired me, but then I realized, he has to leave room for others because then it would look too suspicious if every single person that works for him is Indian. Talking about the LinkedIn profile, I would do all of my interviews on Microsoft Teams, and I would be able to tell automatically that the person I was looking at was not the person in the LinkedIn profile. I also noticed that most of the times they were fidgety, they were distracted, they seemed nervous, and they could not hold a natural conversation about things that were supposed to be, you know, their everyday life in the workplace, things they were skilled at and experienced in. I also noticed that many of them would have a ton of credentials or certifications, because in the tech world, you know, if you know, certifications are the key to success. They would have a ton of certifications all completed within like a year. And they would have all of these different jobs, like over the course of a year or 2 years, 5 or 6 jobs. Those were red flags for me. I noticed that the people that did work on my team, the Indians, they were, not all of them of course, but some of them would take forever to complete simple tasks. And sometimes I would have to go back and forth with them. But the most unsettling thing for me is how I have literally witnessed America roll out the red carpet for these people to come to this country by bypassing certain things with the visa process. They prioritize sponsoring them, and they fight tooth and nail. They invest a lot of money and resources into navigating all of the red tape to get them to America and give them these positions that make them feel like they are superior to Americans, that they are so much more important to America than America is important to them, because we need them. They're smarter than us. They're more capable than us. And again, we're literally rolling out the red carpet for them, and they're taking full advantage of it and bringing their people in regardless of expertise and regardless of qualifications. We are making it possible for them to do what they're doing. So my last couple of videos regarding Indians using fraudulent credentials to get great opportunities in the tech industry got a lot of engagement and some really interesting and diverse comments. And one of the main takeaways for me is the bigger issue is that America has too many loopholes that can be exploited. And foreigners, not all of course, but a lot of foreigners, they are literally seeing America as a sitting duck and as a mark. And they are strategizing ways to take advantage of those loopholes, to bypass the laws and the regulations, and where we are too relaxed, they're skirting around things. And they are lucratively taking advantage of our weaknesses. And so I don't want to conflate the issues, because yes, there are Americans, people born in America, who do the same thing day in and day out. Billionaires who are every day finding new ways to not pay their fair share of taxes, who are finding ways to get things deregulated and to do unethical things because it's going to make them more money. So yes, that is a completely legitimate issue, but that is also a separate issue, and I'm not conflating those two issues. My issue that I'm bringing forward is America needs to safeguard our systems, our processes, our country better, so that it is not as exploitable as it is right now, because obviously it is easy to take advantage of this country. We're seeing it with the discussion that I had about Indians and their fraudulent credentials. There are so many other examples of this. But yeah, my point is America needs to do a better job of safeguarding our country on every level.
I'm a boomer. I fully recognize that America is in an existential war for survival against third world invasion. You don't have to convince me, including legal, visa-sponsored invasion. And even I do not give a shit about all these visa categories. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to have to learn about the difference between H1, F1, Opt, O1. I don't care. The message, the pro-American message, shouldn't be H1 is bad, but this one is good. They're all bad. They are all bad. It must all end. No visas, period. No H1B, no F1, no opt, no O1, no work visa, no student visa, no tourist visa, absent a big security deposit. All the visas must end. None of them are in America's national interest. All the third world migrants must stay home. That is the starting negotiating point. Do that for a decade, and then we can readjust from there. All right, let's talk about the Overton window shift. The Overton window shift on immigration. I'm going to provide kind of a summary of my view. So what I've seen happening is the politically accepted, the within the Overton window, right? The Overton window is what is socially acceptable political opinion. But the whole point of the concept of the Overton window is that the window can shift, right? So things within the window are what's socially acceptable. You can say them at a cocktail party to a stranger and not worry that anyone's going to freak out, right? It's in the norm of political opinion. It's not going to get you in trouble. Stuff outside the Overton window is stuff that could potentially get you in trouble. People will start, giving you side eye. Like how could you even say that? That's crazy. And what I see is the Overton window shifting in a pro-America favor and contrary to the interest of third world migrants, which is, the Overton window, in my view, should be, the American Overton window should be squarely aligned with America's national interest, not with the interest of third world migrants. And what I see the transition being is it was not very long ago, even illegal migrants were okay. Why do you hate people who came to America for a better life? If you were stuck in Haiti with your family, wouldn't you try to get to the U.S. for a better life for you and your wife and your kids? It's just the morally right thing to do, even if it's against the law, right? So even being an illegal migrant was morally justifiable. And by the way, it is morally justifiable for the migrant. It is true that if I were in Haiti with my wife and kids, I would try to break into the U.S. too. But that's not the political question for an American, or ought not be. The political question ought to be, but is that in America's national interest? Is it moral for America to allow those people in and let them stay, to have just be okay with being invaded by the third world? Cracking under pressure, meaning the pro-Indian third world migrant people. Instacart, which is a internet company that hides their job postings, and one of these guys, Americans, figured out how to find those job postings and put them on a website called Jobs Now, so Americans can find them. Instacart hit Jobs Now with a copyright strike for posting one of the jobs. Lawyers are threatening citizens with fake claims that it's illegal for Americans to apply for these jobs, like they're magically dedicated to Indians. American jobs. LinkedIn, the professional networking platform, is full of attorneys begging companies to hire H1Bs. Big firms like Walmart are already backing away from scandals. They just had to fire a couple of thousand Indians who were engaged in the corrupt practices of taking a huge chunk of their salary and kicking it back to the other Indian in HR who got them the American job in the first place. Complete corruption. Why don't Americans get hired? Because Americans are not going to kick back 30% of their wages to an HR manager as a bribe. Then this account, Anna Gorsuch, she heard about these companies that are now exposing how H-1Bs hide the available jobs so that only Indians will see them, that Americans will not see them. Because if an American applies, then the Indian can't get the job. So to facilitate the Indians getting the jobs, they hide the jobs from Americans. And recently, some companies have discovered where these jobs were hidden and have begun posting them. So white Americans see them too, and white Americans are applying, and that's blocking Indians from being able to get in. And the Indians are freaking out. And this woman writes, flooding companies with unserious applications just to deny an H-1B worker permanent residence is the labor market equivalent of a denial of service account. Skip to the bottom. These petty a-holes are trying to hack a legal process that just to spite someone else they know nothing about and have never met. So Americans applying for these jobs that would otherwise go to Indians, that's America being hateful. And I really like this response to her. Hilarious freakout by Anna Gorsuch, that account. The premise behind H-1Bs is not that they become eventual Americans. The premise of H-1Bs is they're temporary, is that these people would come here and work for a brief period of time and then leave. They're supposed to be a short-term solution to a short-term labor problem. H-1Bs are not meant to stay. They are not meant to expect to get a permanent job offer, a green card, because the company is supposed to be going all out to find their American replacement. This was the original legislative intent. H-1B was established before the internet, when Americans looking for jobs.
And now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
We're going to be saying goodbye to the H-1B program. Trump just changed the rules. If a company is going to sponsor you for an H-1B, either you or the company have to pay the U.S. government $100,000. Why is Trump destroying the H-1B program? Nobody knows for sure. Could take some guesses. One, he doesn't particularly like India. Just put 50% tariffs on India, and 75% of the tech workers who come on H-1Bs are from India. Is that a possibility? He doesn't like Silicon Valley. They seem to lean liberal. They're Democrats. Is that a possibility? And he just rolled out the gold card. He just wants people to invest $1 million and come here and get a green card. He thinks entrepreneurs are the way that we're going to build the United States, not with tech workers. Maybe there's some other reasons too I can't even think of. What do you guys think?
All right, so I actually thought about this a lot. The reason why the federal government and a lot of big tech firms are, at least I believe, are counting on H-1B visas for some of their highly skilled engineering labor is because a H-1B visa is dependent on deployment and can also be revoked if you ever do lose employment. So one of the reasons why a lot of engineers, software in particular, are getting such high salaries right now is because a lot of these companies are not planning on needing you in another year or two. So one of the ways the federal government, I think, is planning on averting a massive unemployment crisis when some of the high-skilled labor in the engineering field are no longer needed is when they are no longer needed, instead of having to deal with a couple million American citizens who now need employment, they can just send back all of the H-1Bs. That's my theory, at least.
If you're on or hiring on an H-1B, here's the update. A new executive order says H-1B workers can't enter the United States unless a $100,000 payment is made for that worker. It's framed as reducing abuse and protecting U.S. jobs, but for employers and workers, it functions like a paywall at the border. There are narrow case-by-case exemptions for the national interests, but there's no broad carve-out by industry. So what does that mean in real life? If you're outside the United States with a newly approved H-1B, arrival could be denied unless the $100,000 is paid. If you're already inside the U.S. in valid H-1B status, you can keep working, but international travel just got risky without that payment on re-entry. Employers will think twice before filing, and some may cancel roles or shift them offshore. Healthcare impact. Many frontline RN roles don't qualify for H-1B, but advanced practice nurses and specialized roles do. And physicians often use H-1B when not on a J-1. Teaching hospitals and university-affiliated systems are usually CAP exempt, but CAP exempt is not the same as payment exempt under this order. So academic medical centers, critical access hospitals, and specialty clinics that rely on international clinicians could see onboarding delays, rescinded offers, or program start deferrals. For residents and fellows switching status or changing sites, travel could jeopardize start dates. Patients feel this next. Longer wait times, fewer subspecialties, and more burnout on already short-staffed teams. So what to do now? Employers should talk to counsel immediately about whether a national interest exemption is realistic, whether to pay the fee, and how to handle travel. Workers should avoid non-essential international trips, keep your documents current, and ask HR for a written plan. If you're a hospital leader, escalate staffing risks to your board today and map which departments depend on H1B clinicians. I'll keep tracking legal challenges and any agency guidance, but in short, this is a policy sledgehammer. Plan accordingly.
This is actually insane. We have people deboarding the plane because of something that the president said, because of this $100,000 fine on H1B visa holders. So right now, we were supposed to leave about 30 minutes ago, but people are deboarding late because they're scared that they won't be able to come back.
Today we saw two very crazy things happen with immigration. The first has to do with the H1B program. The Trump administration announced $100,000 as the fee that should accompany an application for the H1B visa work program. This is extraordinary, guys. This is something that is unheard of. There is not a fee like this that exists in our immigration structure. And it's sure to impact the tech industry as well as science and other fields. They're going to take a hit, although the Trump administration has said that tech is on board with this. They're okay with this. The second news has to do with the rollout of the gold card, the Trump gold card, which, friends, it's so ludicrous, it's kind of hard to even talk about. The proclamation says that the Department of Commerce will offer a visa program that will expedite the processing of visa applicants who voluntarily donate to the United States $1 million or $2 million if it's a corporation who is trying to bring someone here. And this is a gift that is to be deposited in the Department of Commerce into their budget. The program is going to be managed by the Secretary of Commerce. And, oh, by the way, this is a pathway to citizenship. The proclamation says that it's going to be carried out in accordance with current law, existing law, and taking into consideration visa numerical issues like the backlog. It's going to be really interesting to see how this works because on the one hand, it says that it's going to be carried out based on existing laws. There's no, what they're talking about here is they're saying we're not creating a new category, so to speak. You can apply to come to the United States through the immigrant visa process, provided that you're otherwise eligible for that visa. However, if you now donate $1 million or $2 million, they will expedite the processing. It will all be managed by Commerce. Yeah, you know that guy. That guy will be managing this. So this is definitely circumventing Congress. This is getting around the congressional intent with respect to visa categories and eligibility and who can come to America versus who cannot come to America. It's getting around all of those rules. This is outrageous, guys. This is truly outrageous.
Trump's gold card visa is basically trying to charge someone $1 million to ride in your hoopty. Right now, the U.S. is a car that's been fleeced. The wheels got stolen. They took the copper wire out. The radio's gone. The windows are broken. And it's sitting on bricks in somebody's yard. And he's trying to charge you $1 million to sit in the seat. If you haven't seen, a couple of things were announced yesterday as far as immigration goes. One being the Trump gold card, where someone can pay $1 million to basically skip all the difficulties of the U.S. citizenship process. And then also when it comes to H1-B visas, which are the kind of visas you get, a lot of people in tech companies have them, where your employer and your work can get you a work visa in this country. They are going to be charged $100,000, I believe, per applicant, your company, if they want to get people to have H1B visas. This policy is actually fucking insane. In the future, if this country still exists, this is going to be one of those policies that they put in the history books as actual landmark fucking disaster. Like the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. It's genuinely nuts. $100,000 is just an arbitrary deterrent number. It's just a number so big that it's not worth paying. That's higher than many people who are here on H1B visas salaries in the first place. Thing number one is that this is going to fucking, in the immediacy, tank the fucking market. It's just going to cause a bunch of companies to panic because they're going to have to suddenly reshift their entire job structure, right? Thing number two is that they're just going to outsource these jobs. We don't suddenly have a lot more labor, but if you can't pull from a world market for your workplace, places like tech companies that use this a lot, you're just going to hire people outside of the company. It's going to be cheaper to set up offices outside of the United States than it is to hire people and have them come here. It seems like people forget that, like, when you hire someone and you pull them here on a visa, they pay taxes. That is money for us. That is money for our country. It will now be cheaper to just have a foreign office and management team that you Zoom call into than it is to hire people and have them come work in an office here. Like, this is the most, it is genuinely a policy decision that only benefits you if you're racist. Because like 70% of H1B visas are held by Indian people. This policy decision is the equivalent of going, hey, we're gonna cut your paycheck in half. And I know that doesn't sound great, but by cutting your paycheck in half, an Indian person doesn't get a paycheck. Aren't you happy? America's great again, folks. We're winning. We're winning.
Now I got to take a minute to explain the United States to the United States, because y'all been getting lied to and you don't even know it. So y'all been screaming, they took our jobs, they took our jobs. Yes, Mohammed the brain surgeon took your job. So back in the 1960s, the United States came to my parents, my family's island in the Caribbean, begging for nurses and doctors to come to the United States. That's why we ended up here. Interesting. Because there was a massive shortage of medical workers here in this country. So my family, they decided to come. Some of my aunts actually moved further north because the same problem happened in Canada. They didn't have enough people trained enough to be doctors. Because the United States, people don't go to med school because people don't really go to college here. Y'all just don't. So now they messing with the H1B visas. Even though they've been running around begging other countries to send medical workers here and people complied, they came and helped out, y'all gonna make H1B visas $100,000 a year. And these aren't just nurses or regulars. These are also specialists, like top of their field, only people that can do their surgery in 3 states over and all that craziness. So y'all just really do want to fall into a category like a third world nation that just doesn't have medical workers to help you and doesn't have medical health insurance or anything to help you. Like, I don't know where y'all think this is going to lead to greatness, but y'all literally are going to send this place down into a fiery ball of crazy. And I'm going to have to pack it.
Now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
When they say high-skilled workers, that's not H-1B. People have been posting job offers they found from like various recruiters where they're looking for like low-level managers for $35,000 a year. And you don't need to recruit from India or any other foreign country for that. What they're really doing is trying to get cheap labor from foreign countries that will take a job in America but will work for less, displacing American workers. So Trump, he just split the baby. Right? The big tech people said, no, we need H-1B. And they were saying American workers are lazy. And then you get the working class MAGA people who are like, no way, dude. Why are we competing with these people from foreign lands? So Trump says, okay, if you really want to hire somebody because you can't find anybody else, you got to pay $100,000. Now, guess what? If a company really genuinely needs an engineer from a foreign country and they can't find anybody here in the United States, they might pay the $100,000. Why? Because this person's going to get paid $400,000 as it is. They might say, okay, fine, we'll pay that fee because we need the employee. Low skill labor being imported to displace American workers, ain't nobody spending $100,000 to hire a guy for $35K. So this is effectively ending the H-1B visa program as far as anyone's concerned.
Yeah, I mean, they had system or software engineer listings for like $60,000 in San Jose.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely ridiculous. It was like they're making it abundantly clear that they were undercutting American wages. And then, yeah, you had like yoga instructors listed for H-1B. Like it was
yoga instructors.
Yeah, yeah. And it was a major company and they had a yoga instructor listed.
To be fair, you probably should get someone from India for that.
It's true.
Otherwise, it's cultural appropriation.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, you don't want to be racist.
Cultural appropriation is good, though.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Yeah. Yeah, it was just madness. So yeah, like
proponents of the H-1B program make this really bad argument that it's totally dishonest, that it's about scooping up the best talent from around the world and bringing people in. We have other visas that do that for, like, you know, the brilliant mathematician and whatever else. The H-1B program is a program almost explicitly designed to undercut American wages, particularly in the tech role. But as we've seen with some of these job postings, yeah, it's all across the board.
Tim had actually done some digging the other day, and it's not just the H-1B visas. There are multiple visas that are basically
the O1.
useless. Well, the O1 is a good one, but
Indians working in the US have gotten the biggest shock of their lives, but it may work out to be very well for India, and I'll explain exactly what is happening. So yesterday, President Trump mentioned that any American company hiring foreign workers on H1-B visa will have to pay $100,000 every year to the US government in the form of a fee. Which means every Indian who will be hired by an American company, well, that company in the US will have to pay 88 lakh rupees, not one time, but every single year. Now, this means that practically all the Indians working in the US and are not already US citizens may have to come back, because right now this is a presidential order, and whether it's going to sustain in the US Congress or not, we can't really say. But imagine it does. I'll tell you what will happen. For example, when I speak with the administration at B schools in India like ISB as well as IIMA, the administration is really happy because right now the kind of applicants they're getting to these colleges for the MBA program are absolutely phenomenal. Because, 35% of the Indians who would apply to the US every year in search for better MBA are now not applying, and all these people are now studying in India. Similarly, now the best of talent from the world is going to come back to India because companies may not want to hire them in the US. And over the next 5 to 7 years, I would predict that a lot of global companies would then begin to bring investments into India, start setting up companies into India, and quite like how China grew over the past 2 decades on the back of their fabulous talent, which built massive tech companies inside of China which are now going global. The same journey may actually happen for India over the next 1 decade, because 71% of the H1B applicants are actually Indians and only 12% are Chinese, which is why, while it is really painful for people who have family members in the US working right now in the short term, in the long term, it may be a fabulous golden opportunity for our country, India. Share it with someone who may need it.
Into India today, I'm Suesha Sawant, and yes, Trump's latest decision to slap $100,000 fee on H1B applications that has turned out to be a nightmare for foreign workers in the United States. This decision is burning a hole in Indian techies' pockets. Their visa fee has been increased by over 80 lakh rupees. The second challenge for Indian tech professionals is to reach US by the 21st of September, adhering to the diktat issued by tech giants. In this bulletin, we'll decode what is in store for Indian techies with the great American dream and what the impact of this move could be. Watch this report.
US President Donald Trump has dropped a $100,000 bombshell on companies hiring foreign talent. In a sweeping move set to jolt global tech hiring, a new executive order now imposes a $100,000, that is nearly 90 lakh rupees annual fee per H1B visa applicant to be paid by the employer, 100 times increase from the earlier cost of just $1,000, nearly 90,000 rupees. Until now, US companies paid just $215 for the H1B lottery and $780 for petition paperwork. But now, with Trump's crackdown, employers must cough up over nearly 90 lakh rupees per worker every year.
What this proclamation will do is raise the fee that companies pay to sponsor H1B applicants to $100,000. This will ensure that the people they're bringing in are actually very highly skilled and that they're not replaceable by American workers.
Trump has claimed that the move would ensure only the greatest foreign workers make it to America and insisted that tech companies would be very happy.
Everyone's going to be happy, and we're going to be able to keep people in our country that are going to be very productive people. And in many cases, these companies are going to pay a lot of money for that, and they're very happy about it.
The move is part of what the US Labor Department called Project Firewall to safeguard job opportunities for US residents, aligning with Trump's America First agenda.
The country would rather not have to pay $100,000, but they'd rather, how do you do that? You hire Americans. So there's an incentive to hire American. But there may be instances where it's better off doing it through expertise or whatever it may be. But they're both unbelievable, whether it's a gold card or or anything else that we talked about today.
Whole idea is no more will these big tech companies or other big companies train foreign workers. They have to pay the government $100,000, then they have to pay the employee. So it's just not economic. If you're going to train somebody, you're going to train one of the recent graduates from one of the great universities across our land. Train Americans, stop bringing in people to take our jobs.
Tech giants like Amazon, Microsoft, and Meta have already raised red flags. Internal advisories are warning Indian H1B workers currently in India to fly back before September 21st or risk being locked out of the US indefinitely. Because starting September 21st, no H1B worker can re-enter the United States unless that $100,000 fee is paid upfront by their employer. Even H4 dependents, the spouses and kids have been told to avoid travel altogether. For many, it's a cruel countdown. Families could be split apart for years. Careers, carefully built over a decade, now hang in the balance. With Indians forming over 70% of all H1B holders as of 2024, this isn't just a policy change. It's a direct hit on India's tech backbone. As the US raises barriers, global tech may realign. The world is watching and India is calculating its next move. Bureau Report, India Today.
Needless to say, this move that has thrown careers, companies and even Indo-US ties into uncertainty. Now, whether this is a temporary shock or a long-term setback, I have with me panelists joining us this evening to understand the consequences of this move. I'd like to first introduce Neeti Sharma, CEO of Team Lease Digital. Mr. Prabhu Dayal, who's a former diplomat and shortly from now will also be joined by Dr. Tejinder Pal Singh Nalwa. He's an immigration law expert and he will explain to us what this move means in its entirety. But before that, Neeti Sharma, I'd like to come to you to understand what is possibly on the mind of a US employer at the moment. Client concerns, project delays, a heavy fee that they may have to pay, or possibly how it's going to impact future hirings and talent pipeline.
Yeah, thanks, Suesa, for having me here. I think this is very disruptive for now, at least, the way we're looking at it, right? Because, but let's say Amazon has 10,000 H1B visa workers on the payroll in America. How would they operate without talent, without that level of talent and volume of talent in the US is a big question. So obviously the ones who are there already don't get impacted, at least in the near future. They'll probably get impacted when renewals kick in. But they will not be able to hire newer people, especially from other countries at junior levels. They will then be very selective and bring in people which have super specialist skills who can only probably pay for the 100,000 additional fee every month, which means that ROI has to be calculated for every H1B visa that is going to get bought in from here on. It's going to be disruptive also because America by itself currently does not have the volume of tech talent that US needs as we speak. Yes, there are talks about bringing freshers, train them, but its productivity gets impacted. So the global companies have two ways to look at it. One, I either absorb the cost, or second is I probably bring in freshers, train them, and then make them productive. Either ways, their cost structures are going to go all over the place, which would also mean that their goods, the cost of their goods are going to be, increased, which would mean consumers will have to end up paying the additional price. So net, it doesn't make sense for the global companies to, at least for America to even look at creating an embargo sort of a situation, at least immediately. The Indian IT industries, who's also have many H1B visa employees based out of the US, and that the reasons clearly are so that they stay on site, close to the customer, understand the requirements, are flexible to make changes that the customers need. Now, if we have to look at bringing all of them back home, two things. Would customers be comfortable working with offshore employees all the time? It may not be the case. Secondly, how soon can we deploy, have enough resources in India to give them workplaces, residentials, schools, so it's a whole lot of disruption that's happening in the near future. I think in the long run, things may work out very differently for India. But right now, I think it's a very scary situation for people who are either studying in the US, looking for jobs, or waiting for H1B. Or, and I know a lot of people have come on vacations right now because this is the school holiday time.
Yeah.
If they're not able to go back by Sunday, US time, it's going to be disaster for them.
Exactly, and we'll talk about that more. But before that, I'd like to bring in Mr. Dayal. Given the fact that Indians are the largest holders of the H1B visa, do you see further straining of Indo-US ties in this regard?
Well, first of all, let me say that I agree entirely with what Neeti Sharma has said regarding the consequences in the near term and in the longer term.
Okay.
Of course, this will impact Indo-US ties because Indian workers are going to be very adversely affected, particularly in the near term. Let me say that with Indian nationals making up the largest percentage of H1B visa recipients, the new fees will significantly limit opportunities for Indian professionals seeking to work in the US. And naturally, this will have an impact on how the Indian government looks at these matters. Indian and US companies that rely on H1B visa workers will face an enormous increase in costs, which will likely affect their hiring strategies. And by restricting access to global talent, as Neeti Sharma pointed out, the US will stifle its own innovation and competitive edge, particularly in fields like technology and AI. Now, India will have to take into account the fact that Indian IT firms had already begun to reduce their reliance on H1B visas over the last several years by hiring more locally. Now, the new fees are expected to accelerate this trend, and Indian companies may intensify efforts to diversify their markets beyond the US and focus on regions with less restrictive immigration policies, such as Europe and other parts of Asia. Now, the Indian government will have to assist such companies in their endeavors in this regard because the prohibitive cost may cause companies to move more higher value work and jobs to India, in fact, and the government will have to make this possible. So in this sense, let me say that the restrictive US policy could turn India's brain drain into a brain gain. And this is what the government must try and ensure. Now, the fee creates a barrier for global talent, which will severely impact innovation and growth in the US. And the highly skilled Indian workers who are unable to go to the US now or forced to return should be helped to build innovative startups and advance India's domestic tech sector instead. So by slamming the door on skilled talent, the US could inadvertently push the next wave of labs, patents, innovation and startups to Indian cities like Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune and Gurgaon. So the government must try and make sure that it creates the right opportunities for all such people. And, for instance, the finest doctors, engineers, scientists, innovators who go from India to the United States should be given now the opportunity to contribute to their own country's growth and progress towards the Viksit Bharat vision. So the H1B visa change should now be looked at very seriously by government and in such a way that it benefits the Indian economy instead of impacting adversely on all these workers and skilled people.
Absolutely. And while you've given me an overview, we'll